sister tried to steal my boyfriend and slapped me 6 years ago. We hadn't spoken since, until my parents crashed my bridal shower with her, trying to force a reconciliation. I'm a 28-year-old woman, and for almost 6 years now, I haven't spoken to my sister. 26F. The relationship broke down after one horrible incident, which I'll explain shortly. Growing up, my sister and I had an intense sibling rivalry, and unfortunately, our parents did nothing to stop it. In fact, they encouraged us to compete with each other. I can't understand why they did that, but I truly believe it made our relationship toxic. If they had intervened and nipped it in the bud, maybe things between us would have been different. As kids, we could sometimes put our differences aside for brief periods, but as we got older, the resentment only grew stronger. By the time we were in high school, we barely spoke, and honestly, we both preferred it that way. Then I left for college, and things improved slightly because I only had to see her during visits home. It was better than having to deal with someone who seemed to constantly be hostile toward me. When I was about to graduate from college, I started dating my fiancé. We had been friends throughout college, and a little before graduation, he finally worked up the courage to ask me out. Of course, I said yes because I had been interested in him too. After graduation, we moved in together. It made sense since we had known each other for so long, and we were already very comfortable with each other. After a few months of living together, I decided it was time to introduce him to my family. I took him home to meet my parents one weekend for dinner. Unfortunately, my sister was also home that weekend, having come back from college. At that time, she wasn't doing so well. She hadn't been accepted into her first choice school and was struggling to make friends, which is why she kept coming home frequently. I, on the other hand, was doing well. I had a job, my own apartment, and a wonderful boyfriend. So the fact that we were both at home together that weekend was a recipe for disaster. When I introduced my boyfriend to my parents, I immediately noticed that my sister wasn't happy. She sulked in the background and barely said a word. My boyfriend already knew about my strained relationship with her, so he was prepared for things to be awkward. However, when I introduced her to him, something strange happened. She suddenly turned on the charm. It was so weird to see her act friendly toward him. At first, I tried not to let it bother me, but it was hard to ignore. As we all sat around chatting, my sister kept trying to engage my boyfriend in conversation, asking him all sorts of questions about his life. Both he and I were a bit creeped out by her sudden change in behavior, but we didn't say anything at the time. Then, during dinner, things got worse. My sister started openly flirting with my boyfriend, and she wasn't subtle about it. It was obvious to everyone at the table, and I could tell she was doing it just to annoy me. I tried to keep my cool because I didn't want to show how dysfunctional my family was in front of my boyfriend, but I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped and told my sister to stop because it was gross that she was throwing herself at my boyfriend like that. She just rolled her eyes at me and continued her behavior, which made me even angrier. I started yelling at her, telling her that he was my guest and she needed to show some respect because she was creeping him out. My sister didn't seem to care at all. She calmly replied that my boyfriend deserved better, and she was just showing him that there were other options besides me. That comment really set me off. I called her a loser and said she was just bitter because I was doing better than her. At that point, something in her snapped. She reached across the table, grabbed my hair, and slapped me across the face. I was completely shocked. We had fought before, but it had never escalated to physical violence, at least not since we were kids. The situation quickly spiraled out of control, and we ended up in a full-blown brawl. We were both hitting and scratching each other, and it took our parents and my boyfriend to pull us apart. By the time they managed to separate us, we were both bruised and scratched up, but still yelling at each other. My boyfriend dragged me out of the house, got me into the car, and drove us back to our apartment, trying to calm me down the whole way. I was still in shock from what had just happened. That fight was the final straw for me. After that incident, I completely cut my sister out of my life. We had always had a rocky relationship, but this was the worst it had ever been. I decided I didn't want her in my life anymore. The next day, my parents called me saying that they had scolded her for her behavior and that they hoped we could eventually work things out. I made it clear that I wasn't interested in fixing anything with her. I reminded them that they had always encouraged our rivalry, so they had no right to be surprised that we couldn't stand each other now. We ended up arguing, but a few days later, they called me again to apologize for their part in our toxic relationship. I accepted their apology, but I told them that I was done with my sister. In the 6 years that followed, I didn't speak to my sister at all. I knew my parents maintained a relationship with her, and that was fine with me as long as they didn't push me to reconcile with her. We saw each other at family gatherings, but we never spoke. Everyone in the family knew we didn't get along, but no one knew the full story. They just knew we had a big fight at some point, but I never shared the details. Then recently, things changed at my bridal shower. My maid of honor had invited a few close friends and family, including my bridesmaids, and of course, my fiancé was there since we weren't sticking to traditional rules about only inviting women. It was a small, intimate gathering of my favorite people. However, without my knowledge, my parents had invited my sister. When they arrived with her, the whole room went silent. My sister looked just as shocked as I did to see each other. After a long pause, my parents approached me, with my sister standing nearby. They told us that 6 years had passed, and they believed it was time for us to make up. They said we were both older and more mature now, and it was time to put the past behind us. It was clear that my sister had been lied to. She didn't know I would be there, and she hadn't agreed to any reconciliation. Before she could say anything, I told my parents that they had no right to pull this stunt at my bridal shower. I politely asked them to leave, along with my sister. I didn't want to ruin my special day by getting into an argument, but they refused to leave and insisted that I let go of the past. Their dismissive attitude infuriated me. They acted like nothing serious had happened and that it should be easy for me to just forgive and forget. I decided to remind them exactly what had happened 6 years ago. I calmly recounted the entire incident to the room, explaining how my sister had hit on my boyfriend in front of me and attacked me when I confronted her. I asked the room if anyone thought that was something I should just let go of. My sister stood there looking horrified. She hadn't expected me to air out the dirty laundry in front of everyone. After hearing my side of the story, my sister walked out without saying a word. My mother followed her, trying to console her, while my father stayed behind to argue with me. He accused me of being childish and unreasonable, saying that it didn't make sense to hold on to something that happened so long ago. I told him that I wasn't interested in continuing the argument and asked him to leave. After a few minutes, he finally left, and I took a moment to compose myself before rejoining the party. Thankfully, my fiancé and my friends were there to support me, and we were able to continue the event without any more drama. A few days later, my mother called me again, but this time, it wasn't to apologize. Instead, she blamed me for the situation my sister was in. Apparently, my sister had been unemployed for the past 6 months, and she had to move back in with my parents because she couldn't afford her rent anymore. My mother had arranged for her to get a job with my aunt, but after hearing what happened at my bridal shower, my aunt decided not to hire her. My mother was furious, claiming that I had sabotaged my sister's chances by bringing up the past. She accused me of ruining my sister's reputation in front of the family and making her look unstable. I told her that I wasn't responsible for my sister's job situation and that it wasn't my problem. I wasn't going to speak to my aunt about it, and that was the end of it. Update 1. Hello, Reddit. Before I get into what happened after I made my original post, I just want to thank everyone who took time from their day to comment on my post. Thank you for all the advice and the kind comments. It really means a lot to me. Now, coming to what happened after I blocked my parents. My sister obviously has been blocked for the past 6 years, so she couldn't contact me, and now neither could my parents. With no other way left to contact me, they decided to visit me. I'm getting married in a couple of weeks, so I really don't have time to deal with all of this. I have a lot on my plate as it is, so when they showed up, I told them to leave because I'd just come back home from work, and my fiancé and I had to head out immediately afterward to meet with my designer for a last-minute fitting of my wedding dress. So they had just shown up at the wrong time, and we were about to leave, but we couldn't even get out of the house as long as they were standing outside the door because I knew that they would find a way to keep me talking to them and annoy me. I even threatened to call the cops on them, but that did not get them to leave either. And honestly, I didn't want to call the cops because I felt like that would be a little too much, and I didn't want to be one of those people who called the cops for every little thing. So, after speaking to my fiancé, we quickly decided to let them in, talk to them, and get to know what they wanted, and then we could be on our way. Once we had decided that, we opened the door, invited them in, and told them to make it quick because we had places to be. Thankfully, my parents came straight to the point and told me that because of what I had done at my brother's shower, my aunt had rescinded her offer to hire my sister, and since this was technically my fault, I had to be the way to speak to her and make sure that she got a job one way or the other. It was just the same argument again, and I didn't want to keep talking in circles, so I told them that I had already discussed this with my mother on the phone, and I had told her that I couldn't do anything about this. So showing up at my house to talk about it once more seemed kind of pointless, especially when I was getting married in a couple of weeks, and they knew that I was really busy. Then my sister interrupted and said that talking about the job offer was not the only purpose of the visit. And that kind of surprised me because that was the first time we had actually spoken to each other in 6 years. Anyway, she continued speaking and told me that the real reason that they were here was because of her, since she felt like she really owed me an apology. I honestly don't even know what to tell you guys because I'm still not sure about what I felt at that moment. I was very doubtful of her intentions because I obviously don't trust her. So I decided to be very straightforward with her, and I asked her if she was only here to apologize because she thought that I would be able to help her get the job, or if she genuinely wanted to apologize to me. Because if she was only here to apologize because she thought I could get her the job, then there was no need for her to waste her breath because it would not be possible for me. She was a bit surprised by how cutthroat I was, but managed to tell me that it was only our parents over here to talk about the job, but she had actually come all the way here to apologize. When I looked at my parents, even they seemed surprised. So this was clearly not something that they had discussed, but my sister did not seem to care about it. She told me that she didn't even care about the job, and she was only here to tell me that she had thought about her behavior towards me for a really long time over these past 6 years. And she always found some excuse to not apologize to me, but after the bridal shower, she could no longer run away from the truth that she had, in fact, treated me really badly. I could tell by her behavior and tone that she was serious, and both my fiancé and I are still struggling to process it. She told me that right from her childhood, she felt like she had to me at everything, and that made her very resentful of me. She realized that she had spent her entire childhood and teenagers competing with me for absolutely no reason, because in the real world, it didn't even matter, and nobody seemed to care. And she regretted all of it because she could have just as easily been friends with me since I had tried to be her friend several times, but she had been the one who rebuffed me because she always saw me as competition. It was insane to hear her say all of that, because that's exactly how I had felt, and I don't want to say it, but I kind of started tearing up when she was sharing that experience. Then she addressed my fiancé and told him that she was also really apologetic for how she had behaved with him the first and last time that they had interacted. She got so caught up in trying to beat me that she didn't even realize what kind of a disgusting person she had become, and this apology was long overdue. After she was done talking, she didn't even wait for us to say anything, and just said that it was not necessary for us to forgive her. She just wanted to get it out of her system, and now that she had, she was going to let us be on our way. So she walked out, and then it was just me, my fiancé, and my parents in the room who were sitting in absolute shock, trying to make sense of what just happened because we really hadn't seen any of this coming. After a while, even my parents left without a word, and my fiancé and I headed out a couple of minutes later for the fitting. We didn't even discuss any of this until we had come back home, and only about half an hour ago did we finally get to talking about my sister and what she had said. I thought that it was incredibly mature of her to finally apologize, even though it had taken her 6 years to do so. And judging by her behavior, she had meant every word of it, so right now, we are trying to figure out whether we forgive her or not. It's too soon to tell because we haven't even started processing all of this yet. My fiancé and I are inclined towards contacting her later and telling her that we forgive her. I have already unblocked her. I just need some more time to tell her that it's fine. But one thing I'm really glad about, even though it took her many years, at least she was able to realize that we could have been friends. Update 2. Hey, so I just realized that I hadn't mentioned what I was planning on doing regarding the situation with my parents in my last update. To be honest, I was so caught up with the situation with my sister that it completely slipped my mind. Anyway, it's been a couple of days since we last met them, and they haven't bothered to reach out to us since then. And I don't think they're sorry about anything. So we're gonna continue not speaking to them. Honestly, I blame my parents for a lot of things, including how the situation turned out between my sister and me. And even now, they had the chance to be better parents, but they completely screwed it up. I had tried really hard to keep them around as a part of my life, but they've always made it quite impossible. In the past 6 years, we had many fights and arguments, but I always tried to forgive them, but now I can't do that anymore. I can't keep making excuses for people who so clearly don't care about my feelings, or even my sisters, if I'm being honest. The bottom line is that we are not going to be speaking to them, and I don't think they're going to be attending my wedding anyway, but just to be on the safe side, my fiancé and I are going to reach out to them in a couple of days and tell them that they are no longer welcome there. So that's that about them. Update 3. Hey guys, so I got married last week. I had a wonderful time and everything was really beautiful and dreamy, exactly the way I had imagined it to be. My parents, just as I had expected, did not end up attending. My husband and I didn't even need to reach out to them. They sent me an email saying that they wouldn't be attending because there had clearly been some sort of terrible misunderstanding, and because of that, both my sister and I have started villainizing them. And they don't need to be told that we hold them responsible for the kind of relationship that we had, even though they had tried their best to be good parents to us. So now, they plan on taking some time away from us and are going to live their separate lives without bothering to constantly think about their daughters, since we don't appreciate their presence in our lives. I mean, I'm fine with that if that's what they want. On a happier note, I did reach out to my sister a couple of days after I posted my last update, and I told her that I accepted her apology and I would love for her to be present at my wedding. She graciously accepted my invitation and showed up at the wedding, and it was just a really happy day. It's crazy to think that a couple of months ago, if somebody had told me that my parents would not be present at my wedding, but my sister would, I would have laughed in their faces, but here we are now. Anyway, I'm just happy that everything went smoothly, and I'm finally rebuilding my relationship with my sister now. Maybe someday my parents will come to their senses and apologize to us, but for now, this is enough for me. My husband and I are going to be leaving for our honeymoon pretty soon, and life has never been better. Commentary time. This story of family, rivalry, and reconciliation is both heart-wrenching and hopeful. The journey from deep-seated sibling conflict to heartfelt reconciliation with her sister reveals an inspiring tale of growth, forgiveness, and the determination to move forward, despite a challenging family dynamic. OP's decision to establish boundaries with her parents demonstrates her strength and commitment to her own happiness and mental well-being. It's tough, but sometimes necessary to walk away from relationships that consistently bring pain and resentment, even if they're with immediate family members. The real turning point came with her sister's apology. It's amazing to see her sister finally acknowledging her toxic behavior, taking accountability, and genuinely seeking to make amends. Despite years of rivalry fueled by their parents, her sister's realization and willingness to rebuild a relationship with OP shows that people can truly change when they're ready to face themselves. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who hurt us the most can also be the ones capable of incredible change. It's heartbreaking that the parents remained obstinate, choosing to deflect blame rather than embrace a chance for healing with their daughters. Their refusal to attend the wedding served as a symbolic farewell to a fractured relationship, paving the way for OP and her sister to form a genuine connection, free from the negative influence of their parents. OP's resilience in seeking peace with her sister and her courage in stepping back from toxic influences is truly commendable. Thank you for sharing this story. If you found it as moving as I did, please leave a comment below with your thoughts. Hit the like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the complexities of family, forgiveness, and self-growth. See you in the next one!